Hello, Eric.
Good morning, Mike.
All right, so today we were talking
Yeah,
about your economic universe.
you're your own resource and you're your own economic universe too.
Yeah, you're in the business of you, right? We really kind of came down to a few factors. So we said adjust your time frame, be committed, not attached, have imagination, vision. We even expanded that to creativity, education, action, 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 and then persistence, persistence, persistence. And ultimately, at the end of the
Stick
chapter, we
with,
said,
make a move.
yeah,
How are you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you
Good.
today?
Good. It's a nice bright day over here in BC. How about over in Alberta?
Yeah, a little chilly. A
Yeah.
little cold or hot cold, hot cold, hot cold this winter has been interesting. Okay, so today we're looking at episode number 5. That's quite
Financial
the
plan spot number 4. Yeah.
yeah, it's quite the I don't know, I'm feeling pretty good that we've gotten
Yeah.
this far. It's a
Here
lot
we
of
go.
work,
Another
right?
one.
Yeah, another one. Here we go.
Another one.
Yeah, so this chapter is titled Your Economic Universe.
So why is
And
it relevant? What does that mean?
what we pointed out is that there's kind of a lot of things happening in the world, isn't there?
A lot. We all just survived COVID pretty much.
We did.
Survived a major interest rate hike, like 4 or 5 times, depending on where you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's major.
Mm-hmm.
Because of what? Inflation.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that hurt us before the interest rates hurt us, and now the
Mm-hmm.
interest rates hurt us. We've obviously got simultaneously wars going on.
Yep. Yep.
So unfortunately, there's a lot of people dealing with that much more directly than we are. Yeah, it's unemployment seems to be rising a bit. Sales are a little low on a lot of companies. Earnings are coming out. So yeah, the economy per se, if you will, in general, the broader market is feeling the pinch a
Yep.
bit, and it's
Yep.
slowly starting to show up in everybody's lives.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
this chapter is kind of relevant, right, Mike?
Oh, it is. It is. And the other thing is too is we got a lot of political strife, right? Like we got, you
Yeah.
know, Pierre Poilievre and Trudeau kind of going at it on the airwaves, and we got our got Donald Trump doing his
And don't
thing.
forget about those two guys down there.
Doing his thing, right? And I guess the point of this chapter, Eric, is that really, we can as humans from time to time let what's going on in the outside world affect our inner world.
It's human nature to kind of look outward and maybe even let the outside of us personally affect us most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess
Mm-hmm.
what we're trying to say is that we have a lot of power, we have a lot of ability, maybe that we don't recognize.
Mm-hmm.
And looking inward, taking charge is the way to go.
Yeah, well, no, for sure. Really looking at your letting the outside world affect your inner world is kind of like a catch-22 because it starts impacting, your world, and then, it's kind of like a feedback loop, right? That
Yeah.
just,
Like a negative
yeah.
spiral, right?
Yeah,
That kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah. And really, when you look at it, like if you kind of jump out, really, we live in an amazing time, right? We've never been more opportunity. There's so
It's an
much going
amazing
on.
time.
Yeah, there's so much going on. Like there's so many offers, along all these digital platforms. There's a lot of ways that people can reach each other. Although COVID was very hard in a way, it probably accelerated, the digital sharing and digital meetings, and that probably accelerated the pace of that by years.
And I think what we're doing right now, being in different physical locations, is a
Yeah,
result of that
yeah,
whole trend. Yeah.
yeah. Like really, you could be in my front, like from everyone's perspective, you could be in my living room right now. Like we're right next to each other. Yet, you're over in Vancouver Island and I'm in sunny Medicine Hat, Alberta, right? So, that just is evidence, right? And so I think, it was kind of cute in the chapter that you kind of referenced an article or a cartoon that you had found that really kind of, speaks to what we're up to in this chapter.
I mean, I loved that book when I first came across it years ago, and it's comic by nature. So I was hesitant to read it because it's a comic book, right?
Yeah.
Adults, we don't tend to do that too much.
Yeah.
I used to a lot, but now we don't. And it was done by an activist who had a bit of a rough time in life, if you will, but he was a very recognized economist per se, even though he didn't call himself an economist, Irvin Schiff. And he wrote a book, How an Economy Grows and How It Doesn't. And it's just great. It's simple to read, and I would recommend anybody to just kind of resource it online. It's available, and we reference it in the book as well. And basically, it's a very empowering story about three fellas on an island who are fishing day to day and who are just trying to make ends meet and are trying to survive. And do you want to go into that a little bit, Mike? Or
Yeah, no, you keep going. Like you tell the story well. So
oh,
there's these three. Yeah, we'll set the stage. There's three guys. They're on an island and they're fishing
yeah,
every day. And one guy gets an idea. What was his name?
Abel.
Abel. Yep.
Yeah. And he basically was going, he was reflecting, I guess, on his life. And he's going, is there all there is to it, right? Catch fish, eat, go to sleep, do the whole thing again the next day. And maybe many of us can relate to that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's this cycle. There's got to be more to life, right?
Have kids.
So and have kids. Yeah. Well, that'll shake the tree a little bit.
Yeah, it's like, you know, go to work, feed the kids, go to sleep, go to work again. Yeah.
Don't forget the dog, the
Yeah.
cat, the
Oh yeah.
goldfish.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so this one fella was reflecting and wasn't happy, wasn't satisfied, was willing to look at more. So he comes up with an idea first that, maybe there's a better way to catch fish. And while he was thinking about it, even sharing the idea, guess what happened? What did his buddies do?
Well, I think they were a little
They were
bit negative.
skeptical.
Yeah, they were negative.
That's right, yeah,
Yeah.
which happens to
That's a
anybody,
bad
right?
idea.
Yeah,
You're
you
gonna
could
starve.
starve for a bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, what if it doesn't work? What if the fish get through the net somehow?
Yeah,
Things like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But he pursues it regardless, right? He trusts himself enough to start the process and begins action. And he gathers the next day comes along basically, and he starts, instead of going down to the area where they fished, he begins to gather materials and he starts putting together a little net. And meanwhile, obviously the other fellas, like you just shared, Mike, they're continuing on with their, hey man, I'm worried about you,
Hmm.
they're kind of concerned,
He's a little
and he
hungry.
continues on. Yeah. Well,
He's a
he's
bit hungry.
going a little hungry.
Yeah, he's a bit
Yeah,
hungry.
yeah,
He hasn't eaten.
yeah. But what is he doing? He's kind of investing his resources, whatever resources he has personally and what he can gather. He's investing time and assets into his dream. They warm him, basically. There's a big risk, right? This could fail utterly. You could go hungry for a long time if you persist this, right?
Hmm.
So he
Hmm.
keeps on going, and he basically, in a sense, the way Urban talks about it in the book, he's investing into a better life, and I think that's what we're talking about all the time, right? Invest into a better life, not necessarily just for the future, even for the short term, and that's what's manifesting here for him. Anyways, the next day comes along, he's finished his net. Long story short, he catches two fish instead of just one per day, which was sort of the average before. And he does two with ease. And the story continues. We won't need to get into it. I encourage everybody to read it themselves. But he creates an economic universe from that success.
Hmm.
It expands into more fish. He's got more time to set up better housing for them, et cetera, et cetera. So quite powerful.
Yeah, no, very cool. Yeah, and in the book, we kind of talk about another story that resonates with me, which is around Alex Hormozy, right? I don't know if anybody who is looking at starting a business or improving their business or even just wants to listen to an inspirational story should listen to Alex Hormozy. And so his story, which we relay in the book, is he grew up as a son of an immigrant in the United States, and his father, I think, was a doctor or something in the medical profession, and his dad really wanted him to be university bound, and so he did. He started to try and follow his father's dreams, and he was at university and he was doing okay, and he had some other mentors, and he said, you know what, I just can't do that. So he had a little bit of money saved up. I think he delayed making the call to his father, when he was driving away to set up his first gym location, to say, hey dad, I'm not at school anymore, and oh, by the way, I'm going to start opening some gyms. So anyways, he went out to follow his dream, and when he started opening these gyms, he's like, okay, I need to fill the gyms. I need to do something, right? And so he kind of took a little course on Facebook ads, and spent, I think it was something like $3,000 on this course, which is not an insignificant amount of money. And then all of a sudden he started filling up his gyms, right? And he's having some success, and he's opening up a few more gyms, and he's learning about the business, and he's stacking some skills, which we talk about a little bit in the book. Then he goes to this I'm kind of fast forwarding a little bit, but he goes to this meeting, this ClickFunnels meeting with Russell Brunson, and he was the only brick and mortar business out there. And so, anyways, he got up and he was sharing about what he does to fill his gyms, and everybody just kind of looked at him and they said, "Look, you've got a level 10, a level 10 skill set in a level 1 opportunity." They said, "You should be teaching everybody how to fill their gyms." And so he's like, "Hmm." And so he went back and he kind of got out of the gym business and he used his capital to start really what ended up being a licensing platform. But the story about how he got there was incredible. Like there
Yeah.
was a lot of iterations, and he had lost some money. He had a bad partner, and a whole bunch of things like that. But once he figured it out, him and his wife, I guess now, I think, Layla, killed it for a number of years, making $1 million a month type thing is what we're talking
Yeah.
about,
Wow.
until they
Good.
ended up selling their business. And I think they sold their business for 40 or 50 million. And then they sold another business for an undisclosed amount. And then they started a new business called acquisition.com. And again, it just goes to show you. And some people that listen to these stories might think that, oh my goodness, it's just a fairy tale. Right. And I get it. I get it how
Yeah.
somebody could think that way. However, if you're thinking about the end result, then it's really more about the process, right, Eric?
Yeah, it takes a different mentality to create that from scratch, like what we talked about with your economic universe. You have to dig deep. Like he had to go in and find the resources within himself to begin any of those first steps.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine, right?
Yeah.
It's a different mentality, strategy, effort, creativity,
Mm-hmm.
things like that really that are so critical to that.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's more the message about what he did, right? I think is what we're trying to get people to resonate with, right? And so after
Mm.
that, we really kind of go through a little bit of a checklist about kind of how somebody creates their own economic universe. And I think the first thing we had is, adjust your time frame.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, besides the mental programming and all that, the time frame is such a big thing because we get really into these expectations about when things should happen, and we completely overestimate what we can do in the short term. Like it's
Yeah.
said, we overestimate what we can do in a year, and we completely underestimate what can be accomplished in a decade.
Yeah.
Even if you give something 5 years, you can accomplish a ton.
Yeah.
Would you not agree?
Oh, for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Like I'm at year 6 and my
yeah,
business has exploded, right?
yeah,
Thank the Lord. Right? But yeah, for sure, right? And it seems like 5 years is kind of this magic number. I kind of look back and I look back at when you go to university, what's that, 4 or 5 years? When do you really start feeling competent? Inside your work or your profession is probably 4 or 5 years, right? And I think it may be tied around that 10,000 hour rule, right? Because
yeah, totally.
we would kind of work. Most people who's got a full time gig are working 2,000 hours a year, right? So could be that whole
Yeah,
ten
that makes
thousand
sense.
hours rule, right? So yeah, for sure,
Did,
adjust your time.
Mike, for yourself, did you ever find during those 5 years, 6 years, a time where you were low on your own personal tank, where you
Oh,
had to dig deep, where you were
oh,
kind of going, questioning yourself, wondering about it, even getting negative feedback from the outside somewhere?
yeah, yeah, all the time. Like the
Yeah,
thing is that again, and if you look at some stats around small businesses, most small businesses don't make it much past 8.5 years.
yeah. Why
And
is that?
well, I think it is exactly that is because what you're doing and what you're responding to and what you're required to do to get the signals from the marketplace on the value that you're creating takes time. Like there's some test, reset, test, and there's a lot of opportunities to just get down,
Mhm.
because you're not seeing the outward evidence of the effort that you're putting into this thing. And then you got the cash flow issues, right? That, again, like you and I in our business, it can be
You got to
lumpy.
live, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it can be lumpy, right? Because most of your our cash flow is on commissions related to product sales, and yet that can there's there, if you create a bit of a pipeline and some consistency around meetings and things like that, you can create some consistent flow, but it can be lumpy, right? And lots of
yeah,
business go that they have seasonality, they have
absolutely.
cyclical nature to what they do. Think about the landscaping business. Well, if they don't have a snow removal, then they're a seasonal business, right?
Yeah.
and things like that, right? So yeah, so I think it's adjusting your time frame, and certainly I've had the ups and downs. Another one is that's really really dear to me is commitment, and it's a distinction that I learned a few years ago around, and I think this is what you're alluding to, this whole commitment versus attachment. I think that a lot of people, are attached to specific results, and when they don't see them, they get down and then they give up. And I think that's a lot of time
Hmm.
that really, again, creates this downturn in small businesses, is because it's hard to adapt and change and respond to different marketplace factors, and you have this expectation.
Yeah.
That expectation can get in the way of clear thinking, frankly,
Yeah.
right? And so it really is, yes, you have an idea, but you and I, let's just talk about our business. Did you think that you and I would be sitting on a podcast, when we met each other 4 years ago,
Nope. Not in a bit.
right?
Not at all.
Yeah. Did you think that you and I
Wait.
would write a book?
Nope. Nope. But we agreed philosophically on
Yeah.
so many things that
Yeah.
just it birthed out of that, right?
Yeah.
So to add to that, Mike, what comes to mind here with regard to commitment and attachment is that you've got to be committed to yourself, right? To be able to plug into your own economic universe. And you want to be attached to a project, to your action. But at the same time, I think when it comes down to it, the litmus test, you want to be attached to yourself more so than a given project. Because sometimes when you're in business, we talk about the 5 year survival rate or whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
Some businesses may not make it. So you
Hmm.
need to get attached to yourself to trust yourself. Would you not agree? Because
Yeah.
some people experience it.
Yeah. But I don't think that that's how the distinction necessarily works. I think really what we're talking about
Okay.
is commitment in general, right? Like,
Hmm.
like attachment means
Yeah.
it has to turn out a specific way, right? And that's
Yeah.
why,
The
really,
results. Yeah.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
why,
I hear you.
yes, I'm not saying don't set goals. I'm not saying be really overly fuzzy, or don't have any expectations. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying though is when you got to be very careful about how you define and give yourself ways to pivot. I think that's something that you've talked about a little bit in
Yeah.
some of it, right? Is being able to pivot
Yeah.
when you see things happen, right? Because you get stuck. Like, I hear lots of
And
people.
I've been stuck with that. Certain outcomes, you get married to them, and if they
Yeah.
don't happen, it creates a world of stress, right?
Yeah, yeah, you're done,
Yeah.
right? Like, you're done. Like, and
Exactly.
that's a great example around attachment. And
Good point, Mike. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple of distinctions one can keep in mind and apply them to themselves. However,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 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 for sure. Like I hear people all the time say, I didn't think my life was going to work out this way. But I'm like,
Yeah.
how could you? How could you? Right? Like,
Yeah.
yes, we have some things around, hey, I'm gonna get married, and hey, I'm gonna have kids, and hey, I'm gonna buy the house, and hey, I'm gonna have the dog, right? But and you and I had this conversation. I thought this was kind of cool, is when we said, okay, let's just say somebody could go out and write a book, and you can open the book tomorrow. You can't open the book today, but you can open the book tomorrow, and in that book gives everything that's going to happen to you every day for the rest of your life, and it will be exact. It will be exactly, what you had for breakfast, the conversations that you had, everything, where you drove, if you worked out at the gym, it would have everything to a T. Okay. So right there tomorrow, you can open up and you can know exactly how your life's going to shake out, right? Even to the point
Yeah.
where it can even say, hey, right now you're reading a book, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And would anybody ever want to read that book?
No.
No.
And that's the beauty of life, the unknown,
Yeah,
even though it
yeah,
frustrates us to no end, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
nobody would want to read that book, right?
Yeah.
You
Totally.
know? And so
Totally.
and so that's the thing. Like, you can't know. Like, yes, set goals and the rest of it, and you can manifest things. So we're not saying that but we're saying the get used to the enjoyment of life, right? Enjoy what comes
Yeah.
at you, because there's two sides to everything, and I know it's hard sometimes, but if you look for it, there's probably a bright spot if you're going through something that's hard, right? and
Absolutely.
and
And a lot of people that sort of are in the yoga world, that's what I've heard of the most, I think, is, they say you can't control how life comes at you, but you can control how you react. or
Absolutely.
perhaps not
Yeah.
react at all,
Yeah.
right? And
Like,
life is not like this.
yeah.
It's like this.
Yeah, it's up and down, right? And I've learned more by the difficult things that have had happen to me in my life
Absolutely.
than ever than the good things,
Yeah.
you know. So
And you know,
that's
economically speaking, they say too that more millionaires are generally created in downturns, in
yep.
tough economic environments, rather than in good times, because obviously people are more in tune, they're tougher, they're
Hmm.
mentally more accurate with whatever they're doing, etc. Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
very
well,
interesting.
yeah,
We
well,
carried a lot of opportunity.
yeah, and in tough times too, people,
Mhm.
tend to get scared. They liquidate things
Of course.
at very low prices, and there's people that have capital that take advantage of that, and the rest of it. Yeah. Okay. Well, number three, imagination and vision.
Well, Einstein said the imagination was more powerful, more pertinent than knowledge, even. So, what do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like everything great that's happened in my life, I've seen it before it happened.
Yeah. So imagination is an
Hmm.
indicator of you seeing a little bit in the future or what you'd like to see in the future, where knowledge is usually based on the past or the present, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great
Yeah.
point. Yeah, no, I love that,
Yeah.
right? Because, really, you know, I think once you are aware of something, then you start to acquire the knowledge, right? So
That's right.
like I
That's
said,
right.
right? Like you've got to be aware of it, right? And then you can seek more knowledge, right? Yeah, and the part I
And
like. Go ahead. Sorry.
so I was just going to say for imagination, you have to give yourself a bit of leeway and wiggle room and a bit of forgiveness because when you're doing that, you're in the process of creation,
Hmm.
so and
Well,
not everything's defined. Yeah.
Well, you just said the word I wanted to talk about, which is
Oh,
creativity.
did I? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, it's
Okay.
perfect. Yeah, it's a perfect
Mm,
segue. I was reading this book that you and I've talked a little bit about, and I think we talked about it on another episode. This book about family wealth. We kind of referred to it in a different context in the last episode, but the one context that we really want to bring forth here is that the book really goes down to talk about how intergenerational wealth is really challenging, and that you're basically shirt sleeve to shirt sleeve in three generations, which means that basically you're back to where you started in three generations, right?
yeah.
And the first generation creates, the next generation kind of holds the line, and the third generation spends it all, and then you're back at square one. And
Yeah.
the one point that they make in that book is creativity, and having every generation have the creativity that the first generation brought, right,
Mhm.
to the family wealth, and how to grow it, and how to adapt to changing times and all that. So I think
And
creativity
build
is a real.
plateaus that keep going up, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 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 and just approach it newly, right? And
Yeah.
with some grace and humility would help as well. Ego factors factor in too much, because we know what problems that can have. Next point we've touched on is education.
That's a given, right?
Yeah.
You kind of got to know what you're doing a little bit with whatever you're doing.
Hmm. Yeah,
Like
like
Alex took those courses, right?
oh, for
He
sure.
didn't know
Yeah.
something about going further. He took them education.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a real point in that you don't know what you don't know. Obviously, blind spots. So obviously blind spots. You don't know what you don't know. Inside of that, you continue to go down, and educate yourself, and really, I kind of find that I'm kind of in the education business, to be honest with you, right? I talk to clients about, look, we're going to go through this, and we're going to really
Yeah,
find out what financial tools work for you. And that's going to take some time for us to go through you, so you can understand them and how they relate to your situation. So, I find that I employ a lot of education in what I do, and I'm sure you do the same.
exactly. People don't, when they come to us, a lot of times they have a product in mind, but they don't really understand
Hmm.
maybe all the options the product may have inherent in it, or the purpose of it, or maybe even a better way to do it. And sometimes the product isn't the solution. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's been lots of I've had a lot of inquiries lately with regards to infinite banking,
Mm,
and all people want to do is they want to just get that money into the policy, and they want to rip it right back out.
totally.
Which is fine, which is okay, right? But again, not really understanding, the purpose, the mechanism, and the rest of it. And there's been some very interesting conversations. I'll have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can
Yeah.
touch on that when we get into
We
that
will.
chapter.
We
Yeah,
will.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
we
that
definitely will.
that should be an exciting one, right? So then, Eric, it comes right down to action, right? Like that word's been mentioned a few times in our podcast.
Yeah, I think everywhere you look nowadays, when you talk to a motivational person of some sort, they're talking about action, which is of course accurate because we're in a physical world. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
happens until we put
Mm-hmm.
some physical action into place.
Yeah.
Mental action is great.
Mm-hmm.
Sorting things out is wonderful, but you got to do it.
Yeah, it needs to translate into something, right? You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And Nike got it right, right?
Yeah. Just do it.
It's
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever, as an
Yeah.
aside, have you ever read that book, Shoe Dog?
Yeah. Yeah. A long time ago. Yeah.
That for anybody that wants to see about your economic universe, read Shoe Dog,
He
because
is brilliant.
that guy struggled and fought for years before, obviously the big break and what Nike
Yeah.
ended up becoming, right? But if you
Oh, yeah.
look at all the things he had to do along the way, oh, it was just, yeah, it's an amazing story. And there's a
Yeah.
guy that was just a force of nature that just would not stop, right? Would not quit. And there's again the perfect segue to persistence.
Yes. PPP. Persistence, persistence, persistence.
Yeah,
Yeah, persistence is just if you're in business for yourself, if you're an athlete, if you're an entertainer, it doesn't matter
yeah,
what you
yeah,
do. You
yeah,
want to succeed, you can't give up.
yep, yep. Yeah, there's a great
Yeah,
saying there, and I love this: is that you can't fail if you don't quit.
exactly. Yeah.
Yep,
And sooner or later, I remember reading something from Paul Newman, the famous actor.
yeah.
It says, I only made it big because I just didn't give up and didn't go away. I was always here.
Yeah,
You know,
no, I love
sometimes
that.
that's all it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a mentor of ours, Norm Trainer, just love that guy, and he said a few times. I don't know if I'm going to get this totally right, but 90 to 95% of success in life is just showing up,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Or just to be in the room at
Yeah,
the right time.
yeah,
Yeah.
just showing up, just showing up. And in the book we have like there's an amazing story of a guy. If you're okay with me kind of sharing it,
Of course, yeah, go
um,
into it.
I met this fellow through an introduction from one of my best clients, and he told me a story. So he has a great business in Calgary. I won't say too much more than that. And he told me about how he got to grow his business. And he said, "Look, Mike, when I was a kid, I delivered the newspaper. And I figured out that if I knocked on enough doors that I could win the contest that was put on by the Calgary Herald to send somebody to Disneyland." He said, "I did the math. I said, if I had, knocked on 100 doors a night, that I would get this many subscriptions. And if I did it for this many nights in a row, whatever, I would win the contest and I'd get to go to Disneyland." So he said all he did is he got his mom to drop him off in various places around Calgary, and he would just knock on doors. And he got, there were, people that swore at him. There were people that, kind of weren't nice to him, lots of bad things. But he said every once in a while, this nice woman or man would open the door and say, "Oh, come on in, sweetie. Sure, I'll buy a subscription," right? And that tenacity for him is translated to everything that he has in his life. Like he's in his landscaping business and he's got a plane. He's got all this stuff. Like he's built this incredible
Who would
business.
have thunk it? A landscaping business, right?
Yeah,
To
yeah.
create that.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is that he kind of says to himself, he goes when he starts, kind of seeing if he can get a new account. He jokes around to his assistant. You know what? I think this one will be a 50 call person or a 20 call person or whatever, right? And he will just call and call and call and call until he gets an opportunity to present his value proposition. And he, has told me some stories where he's actually flown in on his jet to a location in BC because he wants his big contract with this, with this company. And he'll just show up at the assistant and he'll say, "Well, I'm here to meet so-and-so." He said, "Oh, do they know you're coming?" No, but I just flew in for the day to kind of come see him." "You what?" "Just a minute." And
Yeah.
that usually will get enough of a reaction that he'll get a half an hour. You give that guy a half an hour, is done, right? Like he's so charismatic and he's so, the energy, that he brings to the thing. You just can't help but love the guy, right? And yeah, so there you go. And so
Well,
that,
that ties into the 10,000 hour thing, Mike, really.
yeah,
I mean, he's
yeah,
just so confident in what he does after
yeah,
all this time
yeah, yeah,
of
yeah,
pursuing his way of doing business. It's
yeah.
just natural.
Yeah, he takes nothing personal because he knows everybody's
Yeah.
going through their own journey, right? Their own journey inside their
And that's
mind, and
that's the best way to look at it, right? As
yeah,
we put in action, don't take anything personal.
yeah.
Keep the outcome open-minded, open-ended.
Well,
That's good
Eric,
stuff.
we're at we're at 34 minutes.
Awesome.
That went
Hey,
by fast.
yeah, it was great. It was more
Yeah.
fluid than last time, even, I think.
Well,
And
yeah. All right. So today we were talking
yeah,
about your economic universe. We started out
yes,
saying that, hey, there's a few things happening in the world. We got COVID, low interest rates, we got wars. But you know what? Don't let that affect you, right?
exactly. You're your own resource and you're your own economic universe too.
Yeah, you're in the business of you, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, we
exactly.
talked about, we tend to let those things impact us personally, but don't, right? Because there's a lot of things. We live in a great opportunity in this world right now. There's a lot of things happening, right, that we can use. We talked about a little bit of a cartoon. We talked about Alex Hormozy and his story, which is amazing. And we really kind of came down to a few factors. So we said adjust your time frame, be committed, not attached. Have imagination, vision. We even expanded that to creativity, education, action, 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 and then persistence, persistence, persistence. And ultimately, at the end of the
Stick
chapter, we
with,
said,
make you move.
yeah, I can't believe it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, you dialed
Yeah,
right in there. Perfect. Yeah, you
yeah,
finished my sentence. So thank you, Eric, for a wonderful day today. Great spending time with you as always.
yeah.
Thank you, my
You
friend.
too, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to our next one.